Religion is a difficult topic to discuss, especially in today's era. You could say that all religions may promote segregation and hate towards other people's beliefs. The same way, you can say that there's people in the higher up positions who take advantage of their influence to gain personal power. At the end of the day, it is still a complicated and sensitive topic to talk about, and opinions may vary here and there. What can't be discussed is that the same way religion can separate people, it can also unite them, sometimes in a positive manner, but other times in the worst possible outcome. Today, I come to tell you about cults that have appeared in recent years that brought tragedies beyond our imagination. Some of them you may know about them already, while others might be a bit of a surprise for you. Let's talk about them. Roll the intro. Love Has Won. Love Has Won is a new religious movement which was led by Amy Carlson, referred to within the group as Mother God. Consisting of a group that had between 12 and 20 full-time members, the theology of Love Has Won has been described as fluid, combining New Age spirituality, conspiracy theories, and elements from mainstream Abrahamic religions. The group proclaimed that Carlson was a divine 19 billion-year-old being who had birthed all creation. Carlson claimed that she had been reincarnated 534 times, including as Jesus, Joan of Arc, Marilyn Monroe, and Cleopatra, and would lead 144,000 people into a mystical fifth dimension. The group's theology also included references to the concepts of Atlantis, the Anunnaki, and reptilians. They believed that the world was run by a cabal determined to keep the planet in a low vibration state. What's interesting about this group is that they did daily live streams on YouTube in order to recruit more members, solicit donations, and promote New Age products and vitamin supplements. The group has been described as a cult by ex-members and numerous media outlets. Ex-members accused the group of physical abuse and sleep deprivation, with members allegedly only being allowed to sleep for 4 to 5 hours a night, while also suffering acts of brainwashing and fraud. In May 2020, a member of the group was found wandering the wilderness disoriented, naked, and dehydrated after being described by the group as lacking the right energy and being on the wrong side of the mountain. Despite the group banning alcohol and drugs for members, Carlson was accused of drinking large amounts of alcohol and subsequently behaving abusively. In September 2020, it had been stated that Carlson was in poor health and was paralyzed from the waist down, with Carlson herself stating that she had cancer. In early April 2021, the group was located in an RV park in Mount Shasta in Northern California, but were asked to leave due to overcrowding. Carlson was last seen alive by someone outside the group on April 10, 2021. On April 28th of 2021, Carlson's body was discovered in the mission house near Creston, completely mummified in a sleeping bag wrapped in Christmas lights, the face covered in glitter, and the eyes missing in what authorities stated was a makeshift shrine. It stated that its state of decay suggested that she had been dead for several weeks. She was 45 at the time of her death. 7 members of the group were charged with abuse of a corpse as well as child abuse due to the presence of 2 children in the property. On May 5th, Deputy District Attorney Alex Rains announced plans to upgrade the abuse of corpse charges to the more serious charge of tampering with a deceased human body. The group members were reported to be facing a mix of charges of child abuse, abuse of a corpse, tampering with deceased human remains, and false imprisonment, but the charges were later dropped. In the aftermath of Carlson's death, the group splintered, with the most recent Father God, Jason Castillo, forming the separate group Joy Reigns with a small group of followers. The Manson Family. In modern era, it's quite difficult to not know about the atrocity of the Manson family, as it has become the most mediatic popular event related to a cult in the 60s and 70s. Founded by Charles Manson in 1967, the Manson family was a commune, gang and cult that consisted of approximately 100 followers who lived an unconventional lifestyle, frequently using psychoactive drugs including amphetamine and hallucinogens such as LSD. Most of the followers of this group consisted of young women from middle-class backgrounds, many of whom were attracted by hippie culture and communal living and then radicalized by Manson's teachings. According to group member Susan Atkins, the members of the family became convinced that Manson was a manifestation of Jesus Christ and believed in his prophecies concerning an imminent apocalyptic race war. According to people who knew him from many years ago, Manson had a dynamic personality. He was able to read a person's emotional weakness and manipulate them. Manson established a base for the family at the Spahn Ranch in Los Angeles County in August 1968. Female family members would often do chores around the ranch and occasionally had sex on Manson's orders. But those are not the reasons why this cult was one of the most disturbing ones in human history. Their living styles and habits do not necessarily define them as disturbing, since these are personal choices of a dogma where you choose to follow it without questioning or not. However, it is their history and their actions that prove to be a legitimate danger for society. In 1969, the Manson family started a shooting involving Bernard Crow and Tex Watson, another member of the family who became involved in drug dealing. In that same year, the Manson family proceeded to torture and murder Gary Hinman, a music teacher and PhD student at UCLA who became very close to the Manson family. But the most well-known story is the assassination of the actress Sharon Tate, wife of Roman Polanski, in August 8th of 1969. 3 members of the Manson family were sent to Polanski's residence where they proceeded to murder 5 people: Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, Sharon Tate, and her baby. Sharon Tate was 8.5 months pregnant at that time. After that, there were many other murder cases that were confirmed and many others that are alleged but not confirmed to this date. The reason behind the murders led by the family still remains unclear, but according to Charles Watson and Paul Watkins, another member of the Manson's family, Manson and Watson visited an acquaintance who played the Beatles' double album and listened to the song Helter Skelter, and after that became obsessed with the group. Watkins claimed Manson had been saying that racial tensions between blacks and whites were about to erupt, predicted that black Americans would rise up in rebellion, and that the Beatles songs foretold it all in code. Charles Manson died of a heart attack and complications from colon cancer on November 2017 at 83 years old in prison. Today, there's no traces of recent activity of the Manson family, meaning that it was either disbanded or not active ever since. Rajneesh movement. This movement, created by the Indian mystic Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, also known as Osho, never really had a public foundation. Instead, it started when Osho started speaking in public as a lecturer in 1958 in Jabalpur University, more formally known as Rani Durvagati University, and full name being Rani Durvagati Vishwavidyalaya. His teachings consisted of promoting ideals of free love and denounced marriage as a form of social bondage, especially for women. He criticized socialism and Gandhi, but championed capitalism, science, technology, and birth control, warning against overpopulation and criticizing religious teachings that promote poverty and subjection. Due to his controversial takes, University of Jabalpur officials forced Rajneesh to resign in 1966. But by 1972, he had more than 3,800 sannyasins in India, which were his followers. And if that wasn't enough, his ideas attracted followers in the United States, Britain, Germany, Italy, Philippines, Canada, and other European and African countries. In the early 1980s, Rajneesh was having trouble with the Indian government and sent his followers to buy a ranch in Wasco County, Oregon, which they converted into a compound. The community attracted Americans and international followers, some of whom left families and high-paying jobs to meditate at the feet of Rajneesh. Even though the movement presented some tensions with the residents of Wasco, it wasn't until the group collapsed in the 80s due to a bioterror attack in which his followers were instructed of orchestrating a food poisoning scheme against locals with the sole purpose of taking over the local government and nearby town of Antilope. Fortunately, even though more than 700 people were rushed to emergency due to the poisoning, no deaths were registered during this attack. Osho was deported back to India, and the feature was seen as a success into portraying him as a martyr. Rajneesh, aka Osho, died in 1990 and was cremated at the ashram in Pune. However, his movement is still active and has followers in India, the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and Netherlands, just to name a few. Aum Shinrikyo. This Japanese new religious movement and doomsday cult was founded by Shoko Asahara in 1987. Its founder, Chizuo Matsumoto, claimed that he sought to restore original Buddhism but employed Christian millennialist rhetoric while also drawing upon elements of early Indian Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, as well as Hinduism, taking Shiva as the main image of worship. Asahara's purported mission was to take upon himself the sins of the world, and he claimed he could transfer spiritual power to his followers and ultimately take away their sins and bad deeds. Aum's public relations activities included publishing comics and animated cartoons that attempted to tie its religious ideas to popular anime and manga themes, including space missions, powerful weapons, world conspiracies, and the quest for ultimate truth. Leaving biased opinions aside, from a psychological perspective, we can see the narcissism and prophetic embodiment of these leaders so far, who led them to employ a supreme image of a savior and messiah for its followers. In the case of Asahara, he tried to promote his divine image by convincing his followers that he could perform miracles such as floating and defying the laws of physics and gravity. This was of course false and fabricated. However, it wasn't until the late 80s where the controversies would start with this cult. Some accusations of deception of recruits, holding cult members against their will, forcing members to donate money, and murdering a cult member who tried to leave in February 1989 started to appear, which led to authorities to start prosecuting the leaders of this cult who disappeared from Yokohama after the allegations. Years later, multiple terrorism attacks were performed in 1993 and 1994, with the most devastating one happening in 1995, where Aum members released a binary chemical weapon in a coordinated attack on 5 trains in the Tokyo subway system, killing 13 commuters, seriously injuring 54 and affecting 980 more. Some estimates claim as many as 6,000 people were injured. It is difficult to obtain exact numbers since many victims are reluctant to come forward. While raiding the headquarters of this cult, police discovery found enough evidence to expose this group as a massive threat to Japanese society. The police found explosives, chemical weapons, a Russian Mi-17 military helicopter, laboratories to manufacture drugs such as LSD, methamphetamine, stockpiles of chemicals that could be used for producing enough sarin to kill 4 million people, a safe containing millions of US dollars in cash and gold, and cells, many still containing prisoners. On the 10th of October 1995, Aum Shinrikyo was ordered stripped of its official status as a religious legal entity and was declared bankrupt in early 1996. However, the group continues to operate under the constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion, funded by a successful computer business and donations, and under strict surveillance. On the 6th of July of 2018, Asahara and 6 other Aum Shinrikyo members were executed by hanging. Japan's Justice Minister Yoko Kamikawa stated that the crimes plunged people, not only in Japan but in other countries as well, into deadly fear and shook society to its core. After his execution, there's been one case related to the cult's influence in Japanese society that took place in 2019, where the sympathizer intentionally rammed into pedestrians crowded into narrow street as a terrorist attack in retaliation for an execution. Other than that, there's not been any further events directly connected to this cult. The Matamoros Sacrifices cult. In 1989, authorities found 12 male bodies on a ranch in Mexico near the US border. They would later find 3 more. 5 drug smugglers were arrested in connection with the murders. When asked about the details about the murders, thinking they would be given information of internal affairs of the cartel's operation, the police was instead told that they thought the human sacrifices would protect their drug smuggling operations. A drug smuggling group who had their own cult and religion, founded by Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, 26, the leader of the cult, and Sara Aldrete, a student at Texas Southmost College, known as the Witch. The reason this cult is called The Maturo Sacrifices cult is because this group was located in the city of Matamoros in Tamaulipas, Mexico. These cult's activities started to take place in the early 80s, and the practices consisted of raiding graveyards to get human bones to put in a cauldron called nyanga in their local cultural slang, to protect them during their businesses. But on later years, they would offer human sacrifices instead for a much tighter and stronger protection, with the help of satanic imagery as well. This group's activity stopped the day a Texan student, Mark Kilroy, disappeared while on spring break. He was suspected to have been abducted by this cult, and with the Texas politicians' pressure on top, Mexican police was forced to dig in deeper and capture Adolfo. When the ranch of the Central Operations was raided, they discovered the following: Adolfo's cauldron full with a dead black cat and a human brain, and 15 mutilated corpses were dug up at the ranch. One of them was Kilroy's body. Adolfo fled to Mexico City with 4 of his followers. While here, a different, unrelated issue took place in the building they were staying, and thus the police came. Thinking they were coming after him, they opened fire with a machine gun, and reinforcements were brought to the building. Refusing to be brought to justice, he asked his follower, Álvaro de León, to shoot him in the head to avoid capture. By the time the police got in, Adolfo and Quintana, his right hand, were already dead. 14 cult members, including Sara Aldrete, the witch, were charged with a range of crimes, including drug running, murder, and obstructing the justice system, just to name a few and avoid the obvious ones. Aldrete is serving a prison sentence of 60 years, and if she were to be released in the future, she would be prosecuted for the murder of Mark Kilroy. If there's any silver lining in this story, is that there's no activity related to this cult recorded in recent years. The People's Temple. Full name: People's Temple of the Disciples of Christ, originally called People's Temple Full Gospel Church, and commonly shortened to People's Temple. Founded in 1954, this American new religious organization was created by James Warren Jones, more commonly known as Jim Jones. The People's Temple spread a message that combined elements of Christianity with communist and socialist ideology, with an emphasis on racial equality. It is important to mention the political view of this group because it had a further effect on its influence as years went by, since the temple forged ties with many left-wing political figures and claimed to have over 20,000 members, even though it is believed that the real number was more likely between 3,000 and 5,000 members. It is also important because by the time his communist and socialist ideas were being spread throughout his followers, Jim Jones feared the prosecution during the Red Scare, also known as McCarthyism during the 40s and 50s. Despite this, many of the conservative minds of that era still followed his teachings and became followers as well. Like the other leaders in this list, Jim Jones was promoting his cult as a salvation dogma whose ideals revolted around the political environment while being disguised as a religion. Jones's commonly known apostolic socialism cult was accused in the press of financial fraud, physical mistreatment of members, and abuse of children in its care. To be precise, the cult will often ask members of their cult to surrender their children for physical and mental preparation for a community life, for which many of the followers often agreed to do. Other methods of structurization would include humiliation, physical torture, ostracism, and, a lot of the times, even murder. Infidels would not be welcome, and the followers would support these measures. Due to the accusations, media started following and questioning Jones's movement for accusations of violating human rights, for which they rented and fled to Jonestown, Guyana. On November 17, 1978, Representative Leo Ryan, who was investigating claims of abuse within the temple, visited Jonestown. During his visit, a number of temple members expressed a desire to live with him, and on November 18th, some accompanied Ryan to the local airstrip at Port Kaituma. There, they were intercepted by temple security guards who opened fire on the group, killing Ryan, 3 journalists, and one of the defectors, as well as injuring 9 others, including Ryan's aide, Jackie Speyer. A few seconds of gunfire from the incident were captured on video by NBC cameraman Bob Brown, one of the journalists killed in the attack. You would think that after this tragedy, it could not escalate any further, right? Well, remember the case of Alfonso, who wished to be taken out to avoid capture? What Jim Jones did was similar, but only 1,000 times worse. On that same night, Jones ordered his congregation to force his followers to consume cyanide for a massive takeout. I can't say the word because YouTube would censor and delete this video otherwise. A lot of members tried to resist to commit this revolutionary mass self-deletion and were injected with fatal doses of cyanide. Those who were able to escape did it by fleeing through the jungle, but the rest of them collapsed. A massive total of 918 people died that day, including 276 children. While you may be unsettled by me telling you this, there is an outstanding and yet horrifying discovery as well. I'll give full credit of this to the channel High Def in case you want to hear it completely, but the death tape of 1978 can be heard in his YouTube channel. In here, you can hear the followers resisting, standing up, yelling, discontent, and even criticizing the infidels for not following Jim's orders. But what's worse, you can hear the children scream as the event happened. I will proceed to share with you just a small fragment of what you can expect right now.
Die with respect, die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. There's nothing to death. It's like Max said, it's just stepping over into another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialists, communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. Soon we'll have no choice. Now we have some choice. You think they're going to allow this to be done and allow us to get by with this?
Must be insane.
Children, it's just something to put you to rest. Oh, God. Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this. Free at last. Peace. Keep your emotions down. Keep your emotions down. Children, it will not hurt if you'll be quiet. If you'll be quiet.